Okay, so that is it from our current vice president in the person of Gilbert Osuefriye. He introduced the speaker, the man who will be giving us knowledge today. So without much ado, for the next 40 minutes, I'll leave the floor to our speaker to enlighten us on how to write academic papers and all that is associated with it. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Emmanuel, you have the floor now. Thank you.
Please make him a co-host. Please make him a co-host so he
Can
can
you
share
hear me?
his screen. Thank you.
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you. We can hear. He's
Okay.
already a co-host. He's already a co-host. Oh,
Okay.
can you please make him a co-host? Okay, he's a co-host now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening to all of you. It's actually still morning in Ghana. We just started the day. It's actually a rainy day. And you guys know what normally happens in Ghana when it rains. So at the moment, I don't have lights in my office. So I'm just depending on the battery power of my laptop. So I'm just hoping that it's able to take us through to the end. And while I'm hoping it takes us through to the end, we should also be praying that it comes back even before we get to the end of this program. So I'm very grateful and honored to be invited to do this presentation with you guys. And I think I should share my screen with you so you know. All right. So today let me just go straight to the presentation so that we don't waste much time, which is about academic writing. Yeah. Basically, the general name, as we have been calling it, academic writing, is actually a scientific research report. A scientific research report. So in my presentation, I might be using scientific research reports instead of academic writing, but it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. So this is a simple overview of how to go about writing a scientific research report. Before we start, or as a form of background or introduction, we would want to know exactly what a scientific research is all about. And basically, scientific research involves the design of a study where variables are measured and then the results that is gotten from the variables, which is called data, is analyzed. And then at the end of the day, the findings or the conclusions of the results or analyzed data is presented or submitted in the form of a report, which is a formal report. And we have several types of these reports. We have so many types of it. Basically, the report writing process makes the author thinks more deeply about the study they are about to undertake. So you have to kind of design your report in such a way that it gives light to exactly what you seek to do and achieve. So most of the time, a report has to be very accurate. It has to be clear and concise, with all the essential effective communication tools in it, so that when other people or other researchers read your work, you'll be able to understand exactly what you have done and what you are communicating, the results you are communicating with them. So like I earlier on stated, we have different types of these scientific reports, which are also can also be called scientific articles. Thankfully, my light is back. So those of you who prayed, your prayers have been answered. Okay, so we have different types of scientific articles depending on the level on which the reporter or the individual writing the report is or what they have done. So first of all, we have the primary articles. Primary articles are basically original research articles. That's which also includes a case report or case series and technical notes. I would try as much as possible to give you explanations of what these are. So the secondary article also is a narrative or a the types of secondary articles. We have narrative or non-systematic review articles, and then we have the systematic reviews. Apart from conducting a research and reporting what you have found at the end of the day in a report, you can also take other people's works they have done and write about it in the form of a review. So you are reviewing a number of articles that have already been published. So the way and manner in which you undertake your review will determine whether it is a non-systematic or a narrative review or a systematic review. So the systematic review is more like an advanced version of the narrative one. So the systematic review, you have a series of data that you put together and then you analyze, you compare and all that. Sometimes it can also be called the meta-analysis. Yes. And then the third one is special articles. Special articles are really like written by people who are advanced in whatever area of specialty they find themselves. So it could be in the form of a letter to the editor or correspondences, short communications, editorials, commentaries, and pictorial essays. Then finally, we have what we call the tertiary or gray literature. Tertiary and gray literature are different from each other. So they are not too different. They are not the same. With the tertiary one, this has to do with summarizing well-known and well-accepted information on a subject. And it includes like textbooks. So the textbooks that we use in our schools they all fall under the special articles. We also have encyclopedias and websites are all forms of special articles. Sorry, I think a tertiary article, sorry. Yeah. And then when you talk about the gray literature only simply refers to materials that have not really been published yet. They have not been really published yet. So let's say proceedings of a conference can fall under this particular group of articles. Yes. So we have blogs. Blogs are also part of this kind of articles. And then normally reports that are written by governments and other agencies, maybe NGOs, they all fall under this kind of articles, because most of the time they are not published by a recognized publishing body, but they are published by that organization or government structure. So that is it. So today's work or today's seminar is going to base on the first one, because as students, what we write before we graduate at the end of the course of study we are doing is what we normally call thesis. And out of these theses, the thesis too is a part of a scientific research. The thesis is normally a scientific research, even though it is not published, but it is a scientific research. And out of these theses, most of us are able to prepare them according to requirements of different journals, and then we submit to them for publications. So what we are doing today will fall under the primary articles. That is original research articles. So in the first instance, what are the formats or the basic components of a scientific research report? First of all, a scientific research report must have a title, an abstract, introduction, literature review in some cases, methodology. In some journals, they will prefer you write materials and methods. Then we have results, we have discussion, we have conclusion and recommendations, and we have references or bibliography, depending on which format your report to. You can either have references or bibliography. We'll come to all this in the presentation. And then finally, appendices. Appendices is not compulsory, so that one is optional. All right. So let's tackle the first component of a research report. First of all, the title. The title should be very, very informative and should be specific. Please, as I'm talking, if you don't understand and you want to, I don't know whether I should finish before we ask questions, or whilst I'm doing my presentation, you can ask questions. But I think you should allow me finish first. Yeah, so let's continue. Informative and specific, and it has to be concise. Very simple. You don't use complex vocabulary to write scientific research works. Your language should be very simple, very understandable, if possible, to the lay person reading it. Because normally we expect that experts in that particular area will read our work, but most of the time, other people who are not experts in that area also read them, especially in the medical field. You realize that because of the importance of medicine or health, you find just anybody at all looking for articles in the field of medicine to read. So supposing your article contains only medical terms, you realize that the lay person will not be able to understand what you're trying to communicate. So even though you are an expert in that area, you should try as much as possible to let your language be simple, understandable to the lay person. Your title should also clearly indicate the purpose and scope of the study. I realize that in most of our blogs and newspapers, you see a particular title that is so catchy, and then it prompts you to go ahead and read the content of the material. But when you read it, you realize that the content is far, far different from what the title is about. And to me, I feel it's a scam, or they do that to deceive us so that we get interested in reading the material. But in the case of writing a scientific report, you don't have to do this. You just have to go straight to the point, to the purpose of the work, and then the scope of the study. So it should be your topic should be specific, and then it should clearly state exactly what is contained in the report. So a typical example is measuring a nerve response in a So that is very simple, very concise, straight to the point. So anybody who picks a document with this title will know exactly what to expect. Another example is the effects of ethanol on the compound action potential of a frog sciatic nerve. So this one too is quite it's similar to the first one. Sorry, let me go back to my first explanation about the first example. The first example is quite very wide. It's big. It's not concise. It is rather the second one which is concise because it's so specific about the kind of nerve response we are measuring. Okay, now let's talk about the abstract. An abstract is a concise summary of the report that enables readers to quickly assess the content and direction of your paper. So basically, the abstract should include the question investigated, the methods used, and the principal results and conclusions. So this is a brief summary of all what is contained in your report. A brief summary of all what is contained in your report. So you have to be able to summarize the question. You give a little background information about the work you have done, which should include the question you have investigated or the objective or aim you intended to achieve as the first part. Then the second part should also include the methods. So this is a 1 line or 2 line sentence. One or two sentences is enough to explain your methods in the abstract, and then the principal results, which is also a brief summary of the results you have gotten. So you should only tackle the vital or the important results that were gotten from the study. And finally, the conclusion. The conclusion should either be 1 line or 2 lines, which you can add a 1 line recommendation to the abstract. So the abstract should be brief, written in a single paragraph. I've realized that in some institutions or in some journals, they expect that the abstract should be in topics. So we have the objective, the methods or materials and methods, we have the results, we have conclusions. But in most journals, they won't ask you to put them under such headings. So in such situations, you just have to box all of them in a paragraph and don't put paragraphs there. Yeah. And most of the time, abstracts are not supposed to be beyond a page. They're not supposed to be beyond a page. But in some instances, especially in the case of writing your thesis, you can go beyond a page or 2. But most of the time, journals will give you a maximum of between 200 to 500 words of abstracts. Yeah, so your introduction should be a brief section designed to inform the reader the relevance of your research. And it should include a short history or relevant background that leads to a statement of the problem that is being addressed. Introductions usually follow a funnel style, starting broadly and then narrowing. They funnel from something known to something unknown to the question the paper is asking. So basically, what you do is you give the background information about the area in which you are writing the research is about. And in doing that, you start broadly and then you funnel it down, narrow it down to the specific item the research is going to address. And your introduction should include the background information and also the problem you have identified that you want to resolve, and exactly what you intend to achieve. So what you intend to achieve should be put in the form of objectives. So you can have a number of objectives depending on what purpose of the study. You can have more than one objective. You can have just one objective or more than one objective. So it should state all that. So in this instance, you are supposed to convince whoever is reading that whatever problem you have decided to do the research in or on is relevant and it is worth researching about. So before normally you even start the research process, you have to write a proposal. And the proposal, in the proposal, this particular part is very, very, very important because it is the proposal that would determine the person, that will decide whether people will be interested in funding your work or not. Probably we're supposed to have done something about proposal before getting to the report writing. But since we have just jumped here, I'll just mention the proposal in passing. So proposals normally is what you write even before you start your work. So if it is a research institution or a university, most professors would, write proposals and research and seek for fundings. When they get the fundings, they now admit students to come and work in that particular area. And then the articles that we publish as students are all results of the proposals the professors submitted for funding. So the introduction part is very, very relevant. And it has to contain all the necessary ingredients that would make somebody interested in wanting to either read your report or if it is a proposal to either to fund your research. So in summary, your introduction should include the following: exactly what your research is about, what you plan to do, why you are undertaking this research, and which methods you have used or you intend to use if it is a proposal. So proposals are communicated in the future tense, and then proposals and scientific research reports are reported in the past tense. So you take note of that. Generally, it should include a brief background of the study, which would typically include a brief review of the literature. That's rationale and justification for the study. The rationale and justification here means, why are you interested in the topic? Why is the topic worth investigating? Yeah, that is it. And then the objectives of the study. The objectives are the goals or the intention, what you intend to achieve at the end of the day. And we have an outline of the research question and hypothesis. So depending on your field of expertise, you either have to add a hypothesis. The hypothesis is actually a general thing, but in some instances you can, ignore it, especially if your research is not so statistically involved. So at least 4 different sources must be used, only one of which may be an encyclopedia. So in the writing of your introduction, you have to seek for information from other sources, other research works that have been published already in the same area you want to undertake your research in. So you always have to have research is about reading other people's works. So you have to be broad, you have to have a broad understanding of whatever you want to do. So to be able to get that broad understanding, you have to read other people's works. And in putting together your report, you have to use those other people's work to make the kind of argument you want to make. Yes. So all information you learn from someone else needs to be cited in the introduction, like writing footnotes. So an important factor of writing a scientific research paper or report is the citation of references. So whatever material you may have used in compiling your report, you have to cite it. And we have various ways of citing these references, which we would come to very soon. Yeah. So citations are mandatory in a research report. They are mandatory. But in some other studies or some aspects of reporting, especially in the social area of the social sciences, they take a different approach to citing works that they have done. I acknowledge the fact that most of us, or some of us, are social sciences, and I want to state that the approach to writing science-based research reports is somehow, some way different from the approach used in writing a social science-based research report. So we have the natural science-based research report and the social science-based. But what I'm trying to do here is to put everything in a box, generalize everything. So maybe if a particular point is mentioned and it doesn't apply in your area of study or in your field of expertise, you should understand that it might apply in the other fields. And then as an expert in a particular area, you are responsible in studying or in knowing the areas that are allowed in your area and the things that are not allowed. It is your responsibility. But at this instant, I'm generalizing everything. So you should make the extraction. What is important to you should be extracted from what I am doing right now. So the next point we'll talk about is the literature review. In most research articles, you normally don't see the topic literature review, but in others you will see literature review, especially the social sciences, as I mentioned earlier. And then, and also in your thesis, you have to add the literature review section. But when you are extracting information from your thesis to publish, you normally don't add the section literature review. But that notwithstanding, I would want to talk about the literature review so that we would understand what it means. So literature review is actually a problem for most people because most students especially, they don't know what to write about, how to go about it, where to start, what information is relevant under the literature review section and what is not relevant. So this will give you a little understanding of exactly what you should do there. So the literature review is a critical survey of recent relevant research in a particular field. Its purpose is both to offer the reader an overview of current state of research and to situate your paper within that research. The review should be a selection of carefully organized, focused, and relevant literature that develops a narrative story about the topic. So the literature review basically is about telling a story. You are telling a story about the research area you have decided to work on. So you give a brief, information about probably how the work started, and then you narrow it down. So I would one way or the other say that the literature review section is an extended version of your introduction. But in this instance, you don't necessarily have to put some ingredients in, like the objectives and those things. You just have to concentrate on what has been done so far in the area, in that particular area. So let's say you are writing about COVID-19. So you have to give a background information about how COVID-19 started. When did it start? How has it been reported to have started? Because there are so many theories about how COVID-19 started, up to the extent of people relating it to the 5G network and all that. So all these things can come under the literature review as topics. So each topic should be, it should be more like a systematic way of presenting it. It should follow each other. So you start from the beginning, then what is happening now? What are some of the works that have been done so far about it? All that. So you are building a story. Then you narrow it down to the problem. Maybe the problem is that you are trying to report that you have tested and found a vaccine that works for the prevention of COVID-19. So you have to start it in that way. So you get to the point where you talk about the other people who have investigated to find vaccines, whether they have been able to successfully do it or they haven't been able to do it successfully. Okay, if they haven't been able to do it successfully, what were some of the things they missed? What were some of the things you think they could have done to be successful? And then now you would bring your own. So this is what, if you thought that this was what they were supposed to do and they didn't do. So you list what you think you have done or you can do to change the situation. So something like that. So you start it that way and then end it with your own work. So your review should answer the following key questions about the literature. What is the current state of knowledge on the topic? I've mentioned that already. What different approaches, methodologies are there? I have mentioned that too, as what they did and what they didn't do. That is the methodologies. Where are the strengths and the weaknesses of the research? So that is it. And what future research is needed. What you think you can do or what you think should be done so that they could, the vaccine will eventually be found. Yes, that's it. So we move now to methodology. Please be jotting down your questions because I've realized I'm moving somehow fast.
Yeah, there's a section for Q&A. There's a Q&A section, so they will ask questions.
All right. Thank you. So now the next component of the research report is methodology. Methodology or materials and methods, they are all the same. whatever the particular journal you want to submit your paper to says you should use, that is what you should use. Some will even say you should use methods used. Yeah. So this section should chronologically give details on how you conducted your research so that others can understand and replicate your approach. It gives a brief description of materials, sampling dates, locations, and methods used. The details of the standard and generally known procedures should be kept to the minimum. Simply reference the procedure. So you should just tell us how you conducted your research. And this part 2 is very, very important, especially when you are drafting or writing a proposal. Your methodology is also something that can easily sell you out, because the funding agencies normally know methods that have been used. And then day in, day out, new methods are being discovered. So a research funding organization wouldn't expect you to use a research method that was used 10 years ago when there are recent research methods that are being used now. So you should be able to look around, research, and find the best or the most recent research methods available and use them for your work. Or if you have on your own discovered a particular method that you think will work for you for the purpose of your research, then you should also use it. And if you are using a particular method that has been used over and over again and has been published in other articles, you don't have to give so much details about the procedure. Number one, take the sample, put it in this 10 liter of the diluent, you do this low. You don't have to give such details. All you need to do is to go and cite the person who used that method or the paper that used that method. So instead of saying giving all those details, you can just go ahead and say, as used by Abner et al., or as used by Japan et al., 2005, and all that, and it is acceptable for you. So in a field study, a general description of the study site is required, complete with maps. So if your work is an ecological or an environmental study, where you have to go out and go and pick either samples or interview individuals or something like that, you have to describe the area in which you are conducting that study. And most of the time, you should use maps to back your description so that anybody who picks your work will know exactly the location of where you did the work. Of Google Maps and all that, they are beginning to say that the maps are not all that necessary. All you need to do is to mention the exact location, and whoever wants and then search. Search and find the location. If commercial computer software is used, and indicate the version used. I've realized that with when it comes to under methodology, when it comes to people citing the analysis of data, how they software version, that is where you have used. If it is SPSS, add the version. If it is what is it? MATLAB, you use to mention the version and all that. But you should go further and also mention the type of statistical methods you use to analyze your data, and you should cite it. So let's say you used ANOVA, one-way ANOVA, two-way ANOVA, or you used any statistical tool or method, you should mention that method. And just saying I used a particular computer software to analyze my data is not enough to deal with this part of the methodology. Yeah. So the methodology is always written in the past. So I have mentioned this already. When you are writing a proposal, your methodology should be written in the future tense. And then when it is you are done with the work and you are reporting in an academic writing, then it should be written in the past. And then normally another issue is a lot of students personalize their writing, and I did this and we did this, and the researcher did this and the researcher did that. It's also one way or the other bad language. Don't personalize your writings. What you have to do is to say, this was done, that was done. It was, then it was this, then it was done this. But don't say, and we did this, and I did this, and the researcher did this. No, it was done, that was done. It is more appropriate language to use. So don't personalize your writing, because at the end of the day, when the work is published, it is not going to be up and not used. So don't personalize it. So this written succinctly, brief and to the point. You should be brief and to the point. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to results. Under results, results is also a section where you present all your findings, all what you have gotten from the work. And in presenting your results, you have to be concise. It has to be tabular. You can use tables, you can use graphics, and you choose to ignore any of these tables or graphics. You can write them as sentences or anything. But the important thing is that it should be a true representation of exactly the results you intend to communicate to your readers. But that in writing your results, you use tables and figures or graphics, because people can understand those ones. Write English. Once we had a no amount of English, since the person is able to understand it just by watching. Yes. So this section describes but does not interpret the major findings of the experiment. So this one, you're just presenting the results as it is. You're not trying to make any interpretation as to why it is so or it is not so. You just tell us, you just tell the reader, this is what we found. This is what was found at the end of the day. And that is it. End it there. Another thing you have to do is to tell the reader exactly what you found, what patterns, trends, and relationships were observed. So let's say if there were a series of measurements and there's a particular pattern that was realized. You have to explain to the reader those patterns. So maybe proportionally or directly proportional. This and that are directly proportional with each other. As this one is increasing, that one too is increasing. As this one is reducing, this one is also reducing. Something like that. So you make comparisons. Okay, as we moved from this section to that section, we realized that there was an increase in this particular variable, or there was a reduction in this particular variable. And then you end it there. Don't tell us why you think there was an increase or a reduction. Yeah. Also, you have to present your results in a consistent manner. That's if a particular set of results are presented in percentages, it should be so throughout. So if you are using dollars to present an amount of money to describe an amount of money that was spent of, you use dollars throughout. You don't have to use dollars somewhere and use these elsewhere. If it is kilograms, you use kilograms throughout. If it is percentages you are measuring in, you use percentages throughout, so that there will be consistency in the way you present your work, so you don't confuse your readers. All right. Note on visual data representations. Graphs and tables may be used to reveal trends in your data, but they must be explained and referred to in adjacent accompanying context. Figures and tables do not simply repeat information given in the text. They summarize and amplify or complement it. Recently, I helped somebody write a paper, prepare a paper for publication, and I realized that whatever was presented in the table was again presented in the text that was written about it. In this instance, it was more like boring whoever is going to read results bit by bit, quite boring. Just tell the person the most important points you realize in your results. That's all. So let's say if all my results were within normal range, except for one, then you mention that one. But if you want to say, okay, this one was this, that one was that, this one was this, that one was that, it will go a long way to bore your reader. So once the point has already been made in the table or in the figure, it is important for you to just say one or two lines about the major points in the table and continue. The next point, graphs are always referred to as figures, and both axes must be clearly labeled. So you should also, when you are using figures or graphs should be labeled as figures, and any other let me say any other diagram you use should be labeled as if you use a particular diagram to present something, it should be a figure. And then tables should be labeled as tables, and then pictures are normally labeled as plates. Plates, Plate. So we have plate 1, plate 2, plate 3. Yeah. So you should keep that in mind. So when you're putting a particular picture in your work, you should label it as a plate, unless otherwise stated by the journal you want to submit your work to. Yes. Okay, thank you very much on that. Let's move on to discussion. The discussion focuses on the hypothesis or research question. This section is where you interpret your results, account for findings, and explain the significance within the context of other research. In the discussion, examine the amount and possible sources of variability in your data, including experimental error. Examine your results for bias and evaluate its effect on data interpretation. So, discussion is a section where you tell us why you think your result is the way it is. So that's where basically you interpret your results. And while you are doing this interpretation, you have to try as much as possible to compare your work with other people's published works or already published articles or documents. Yes. So when you do the comparison, you have to make sure you cite the reference of the material you use, or wherever the information you got from the material should be cited. So it is very important. So here we give reasons. We try to, so if you are a scientist, okay, we are all scientists. If you're a researcher, this is where we really test your ability to be creative or to be innovative. Because after you have gotten the results, you have to explain why or try to give light into why your result is so. So let's take Mendel's experiment, for example, when he crossed different colors of cowpea or different cowpea varieties and got certain results. He now went and sat down and thought about his results. Why are my results coming out like this? And in the process of thinking, he now discovered that, okay, maybe in the various varieties, that is being transferred from offspring. And that is how knowledge is discovered. So later scientists now also did more research and discovered that yes, there is truly something like that. And then more research was done, and finally the name gene was given to that particular component. But at Mendel's time, he didn't really understand, he didn't really give, he didn't really get exactly what was happening, but he was able to at least trigger that idea that later developed into what we now call gene. So that is the reason why we call him the father of genetics, because he was the first person that brought up that idea. So now when you get a result, you also sit down and then you think, okay, this person also used the same method and got this result. Why could it have been so? Could it be because of the location, or if he used a different method, could it be because of the different method he used? Okay, how different is his method from ours? Let's consider errors. What errors may have come as a result of the method I used? What errors may have resulted as a result of what method he used? So how does that relate to my work? And what conclusions do you draw from the two or from the different works you are comparing your work to? What conclusions do you arrive? You put all those things there. So when you make this kind of discussion or argument, at the end of the day, whoever is reading it even becomes more interested too, and probably will also find more ideas about your work and probably also build upon it, or write to the editor of the journal in the form of a letter or a correspondence or a short communication or whatever to address your results. Yeah, so that is the reason why we have all these types of scientific writings. Yeah. So develop arguments for and against your hypothesis and interpretations. So one thing you have to also know about is that right from the introduction to your conclusions, you don't have to deviate from the hypothesis or interpretations or the objectives you are trying to work on. You don't have to deviate. You realize that some students will present to you exactly the hypothesis or the problem or the objectives they want to work on. And then when they get to the results section, you realize that the results and then the hypothesis or the arguments don't match in any way. They are different from each other. They just got results and they are presenting. But normally it is not so. You have to make sure that every result and the hypothesis and the interpretations of your research. So never deviate from the hypothesis. Never deviate from the hypothesis or the problem or your objectives. You should make sure that they are in line with each other. So whatever argument you are making should, at the end of the day, either be for or against your hypothesis. So your hypothesis was that if you use this particular ingredient or that ingredient in your COVID-19 vaccine formulation, it will make it more potent than the other ones that have been produced already. So at the end of the day, you now have to tell us, so in adding that ingredient, was it able to make the vaccine more potent than the other ones that have already been produced? So yes or no. If they were not, why? If they were, why? So that is basically research. We do research to discover new things. So at the end of the day, you should be able to state the new thing that you have discovered. So do not make generalized statements that are not based on your data, known facts or reasoning. So sometimes you will see other people also have their results all right, but their discussion has nothing to do with the results. They are saying their own things because they don't even understand the results they have put there. So it is important for you to understand your results. And whatever discussion you are going to make must be in line with the results. It shouldn't be on something else. It could be something related to what you have done, but not necessarily your results. So you have to take note of that one too. So sometimes you write and then whoever is reading is not able to make a connection between what you are writing and the results you have gotten. Yeah. Be sure to relate your findings to other studies and cite those studies. I have mentioned that already. Draw positive conclusions from your study whenever possible. Based on this, some people think that when you don't get positive conclusions or positive results, then you cannot report your findings. When you are going to look for the prevalence of malaria in children between 0 and you get 0 number of children having malaria, even though it is not what you expected, but it is still results. So you have to report it and you have to tell us why 0 number of children between 0 and 5 didn't have malaria. It could have been because of the season. It could have also been because of the environment in which those children find themselves in. So you don't necessarily have to get a positive result in order to make a positive conclusion. A negative result is also results. So if you can't present your results in tables because they are all negative, that doesn't mean you shouldn't present results. You can just write it in a sentence form. even 1 or 2 line sentence under the results section is also results. And you can have a 1 or 2 page discussion based on that results. So you should be innovative, you should be creative whenever it gets to this discussion section. You have to think outside the box, and you have to make interesting arguments that will make somebody want to contact you at the end of the day, and would want to contact you at the end of the day and collaborate with you. Yes, I remember one of my colleagues here was contacted by the embassy of Mexico just because of a paper he had published. And right now they have collaborated with him and then launched a research. I think it was a 3-year research that could be renewed for another year or 2 after completion. And then all the money is going to come from the Mexican government just because of the paper he had published. So the kind of paper you publish sells you to the research community. You just sit down and receive a mail from a professor somewhere. I'm interested in this work you have done. And then I think we can collaborate and do more. And then also, if you are looking for funding, you have to give a track. You have to have a track record of writing good research materials. All that, will sell you. So research report writing is a very, very important tool for your personal development. It is very important. So quite apart from the fact that research institutions and universities would expect that you publish in order to be promoted in the ranks of the field. You also need this to be able to connect with the outside world, and then it also makes your university more visible. The more you publish in highly highly known journals, worldly, internationally accredited journals, the more your university becomes visible. And it is based on some of these visibility that they rank universities yearly. So you may ask yourself, how do they normally rank these universities? All the ranking is based on some of these things. The number of people who are publishing in a particular kind of journal within the year, and the number of people who are attending conferences from that kind of university within the year, the kind of collaborations the university is doing with other bodies, research or government or industries. All those things play a part or a role in the ranking of the universities. And then the level of experts we have in the university. So if your university has like 1,000 professors, and then another university that has just about 100 professors, you realize that they will, rank that one with 1,000 professors as higher than the one with 100 professors. Because before a professor can get to that level, he or she would have to publish a whole number of papers. And whilst you are publishing, you are making your university more visible. So that is why this is very important. And then publishing a research article is not only limited to students or researchers. Anywhere you find yourself, you can publish a paper, you can publish a book, you can publish anything at all that might interest people to read your work. So we should all try as much as possible to learn the art of writing and publishing. We should do that. It is very, very important. So whichever field you find yourself in, it could be in the field of music, it could be in the field of law, it could be in the field of engineering, it could be anywhere at all. Maybe you don't necessarily have to conduct a particular research to write a research, an academic material, but you necessarily need to have experience. Out of experience, you can write and publish a book. You can also write reviews. So you take a number of articles people have written, put them together in a review, make it interesting, draw some interesting conclusions at the end of the day, make some vital recommendations, and then it will be published. So let's as students, I know not all of us are going to be academics at the end of the day, but or in academia at the end of the day, but after writing, you can always write. So let's talk about the. We are actually getting to the end of our presentation of our seminar. Conclusion. The conclusion should contain a brief summary of your basic findings, followed by a set of clear statements that you believe explain your results. In this section, answer questions such as was your hypothesis valid or invalid? To what extent are your findings conclusive? Are there any practical applications? Have your findings uncovered new questions or directions to be extended in future research? Okay, I think I would say that in writing your conclusion, write whatever has been said already. Just go straight to the point and tell us your findings. That is all. And then under conclusion, you can write one or two recommendations or suggest, make recommendations for further studies to be done in that particular area, maybe using a different method or exploring other aspects of the area that your research didn't explore. That is all. Then you close your reporting. Then after that, you talk about, come to the references and bibliography section. The reference list contains all the resources you have cited in your work. There's a difference between references and bibliography. With bibliography, a wider list containing all the resources that have been consulted or you have consulted, but not necessarily cited in the preparation of your work. So sometimes you can use some words that you don't necessarily cite in your write-up or in the text. So this is where you now add them, and then when you add them to that section, it now becomes bibliography and not references. With references, you have to make sure that whatever is in text cited is listed under the reference section, and whatever is listed under the reference section is also cited in text. That is what you should make sure you do. But with bibliography, that one you can choose to cite in text or not, but you bring them under the bibliography list. So it is important to check which of these is required and the preferred format, style of references, and the presentation requirements. So every journal has a particular format they use or style. Some journals will ask you to write a bibliography. Some journals will ask you to write a reference list. All these lists have different formats to use. We have names for them, and you should know those names. Under referencing, we also have softwares you can use to manage your references, especially if you now become an expert in a particular area. and you constantly use those materials in your writings. You can have a database of your references on such platforms. We have an example, EndNote is there, and use that. We have other ones that are also widely known. So finally, let's talk about the appendices. Appendices simply means this particular word was gotten from our body. You know, we have the appendix as part of our gut or our intestinal tract or digestive tract. And the appendix doesn't really play any role in the digestion of the food, but it is there. I don't know why it is there, but it is there. It doesn't play any role. So the same way in your report, the appendices doesn't necessarily play any role in the work you have done. But you can put it there, whether it is there or not. It might not change anything you have written in the work, but it only goes a long way to give more information to the reader about whatever you have put there. And normally, appendices are numbered as Appendix A, Appendix B, Appendix C. So, yeah. So that is it for the presentation. Actually, I prepared another presentation for referencing, because it's also a very important part of research or our reports that students normally find difficult to understand, or to understand. So I have another presentation for that on that, but I don't know if time will permit me to go ahead with it before we come to asking questions. But the moderator will decide whether I can go on with it or not. So moderator, over to you. Thank you very much for your time, for your audience.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Cont'd, for this insightful presentation that you've given us. And I've actually learned a lot today. With the PowerPoint on the referencing, can we know how long you assume that it's going to take, or how long the PPT, so that if it is lengthy, then the NUGS executives can arrange for another academic seminar, and then we will specifically give you that day for you to brief us on the referencing. I think that will be very, very good to us. Probably you can throw more light on it if you have a longer time on that day. Would that be possible in your on your schedule?
Well, I think if time allocations are not available,
Yes.
instead of me even doing a presentation, I can just hand over the slides to you so that you share them amongst your members.
Yes. That would be that would also be
because it's also straightforward. You don't really need a presentation to understand what it entails. Yes, when you read it, it's self-explanatory. Yeah. So I'll just add that slide to it, to this particular one I'm presenting, for you to distribute to members. Yeah.
Okay. I just saw someone asking Deborah that, please, can we get the PPT after the presentation? Yes. The PowerPoint will be given out. Will be given out on the NUGS platform, and then in addition to what Mr. Cont'd presented on today, we are going to add the one for the referencing to it, so that you can have both. So this is now the Q&A section. If anyone has a question, you can ask our honorable speaker, Mr. Cont'd. The floor is open for questions now. Or you can also type if you don't want to speak or you don't want to switch your video on. You can type it in the chat section, and then I will just read it for him, or he can also just have a look at it there. So questions, please. We are going to have the Q&A for 5 to 10 minutes. So we are still waiting for your questions. If you have any questions relating to either the presentation that he did or anything, any challenge that you are facing personally in your research work or in your private studies, I think he'll be in a better position to give you some suggestion.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
yes. Please go
I
ahead.
have a question. I have a challenge here. I want to know what the appendices should contain, exactly what it should contain. Because some lecturers told us that most of the time it has to contain the tables, but what doctor has presented is like the results should contain the tables, not the appendix. So I want to know more about what the appendix should contain.
Okay, Razak. Okay, so Mr. Combat, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Razak. You know, at the end of the day, at the end of your research activities, there are so many informations you may have gathered that all of them cannot fit into the reports or the main components of the reports. So the appendix section is normally added or included so that all such informations will be placed there for further referencing or further understanding to the reader. So let's say you have undertaken a particular statistical analysis, and you know what happens when you do some of these analysis. You have so many figures and tables that most of the time is so, ambiguous or cumbersome to understand. So immediately, so what you do is you take the major aspect of that analysis, or maybe the end results of that analysis, and put it at the results section. Then the other things that you think they are not exactly the end results, but they are a means to getting, they were part of the processes you took to get the results. You get it? So you now take that part and go and put it under the appendix. So in presenting your tables, in presenting your results, there are just either use figures, you either use text, figures, or tables. Yeah, so that's under the results, you only put relevant results or relevant findings of your work that you use to do your discussion and to draw your conclusions. But the appendix necessarily doesn't have to have a direct impact on your discussion or your testing. It only gives additional information. So it may be the number of, let's say, if you interviewed human beings or you interviewed people, then you write their numbers and their names, their locations, phone numbers, and all that. You can't put it in the results. So you have to go and put it under the appendix. If probably you have extra pictures, pictorial, whatever, of how you did the work, maybe in the lab, you take a picture of the processes you use. You can't necessarily put all of them in the report. You might put one or two, then you take the rest and go and put under the appendix. So if there are other figures that are not directly relevant to the report, you put it under the appendix. So appendix doesn't really have a limit or a specific requirement as to what you can put there. You can put anything at all that is related to the work you have done. Anything at all. Anything at all. Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cont'd, for your answer. Mr. Razak, I hope your question is answered. So
yes,
okay,
I'm okay.
Okay.
But I have another question. I don't know whether I'll be permitted.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. And then before I read the question from Deborah, go ahead with your next question.
My next question is, Dr. Cont'd mentioned that during the materials and method, if you are presenting your materials and method, you are supposed to mention the place. Let's assume that you have done the work in a particular lake. You are supposed to mention the place or use a map to indicate. So in this case, if you have carried the research on different locations, for example, you catch a fish at maybe Bean High or some place, and then you carry the fish to maybe in the lab to carry out an experiment. I don't know how you are going to present it in your materials. I mean, are you going to mention all the places, or how are you going to do? So, Dr. Cont'd, can you?
Okay. Thank you very much. If I understand your question very well, if you, I mean, did maybe conducted a research at different locations, are you going to list all of them or not? Is that not it?
Exactly.
Yeah. If possible, yes. Say maybe you performed a particular analysis in your university, but for another analysis, your university didn't have the facilities, so you had to move to another facility elsewhere to go and do it. It's important that you mention the names. So you can say you did maybe this analysis in this university, in this lab, and then you did that analysis at that university, in this lab. You get it? But most of the time, for what we do, especially if it is lab work, you don't necessarily have to state that you did it in a particular place or a particular location. We all know that a particular lab, let's say a molecular lab, has certain basic equipment. So if you say you did a particular analysis, maybe it's the equipment you mentioned and not necessarily the location, because the location will have an influence on the results, an effect on the results. You get it? That's why I stated that if it is an ecological study or an environmental study, that one, the environment has a direct impact on the results. So you have to state it. You get it? What you do in a temperate environment, a temperate zone, is definitely will be different. The results you get when you conduct an ecological and environmental study in a temperate environment will be different from when you do the same thing in a tropical environment. So that is the reason why we mentioned the locations or the site where you conducted the experiment, that if it will have an influence on the result. But in the lab, normally the environment, you are in an AC, in the temperature, and then maybe the lighting is controlled. You see, the AC room, light, temperature is controlled. Or yeah, so they won't have direct impact on the kind of results you get. That is why you don't necessarily have to mention those locations. You get it? So
Okay.
in this instance, you have to describe to us the kind of environmental condition let's say, like you mentioned, you do the experiment in being high. So you have to mention you did it in being high, but under what conditions? Because another person can do an experiment in being high and give different conditions, under different conditions. You get me? Yeah. I don't know if this answers your question.
Not really. No, I'm not
Not
satisfied.
really.
Yes.
Okay.
What I was trying to mean is that that's trying to use the catching of fish as an example. When you catch a fish for, let me give this particular example. Maybe in a different province, you are asked to particular maybe a place to catch a fish in a particular condition. Then now send them to another province in a particular to carry out an experiment. That's what I'm saying. But you were saying that you can use maps and other things.
Okay.
So I'm saying that using these two particular places, are you going to bring the two maps, maybe go to different province, take the map of that particular place, then come to maybe Shanghai, take the map of your school and indicate where you did it?
Yes, it's important. If you have done it in two provinces, then it's important you mention those two provinces. But like I said, nowadays, some journals don't actually encourage you adding maps, because we now have Google Map and the internet is everywhere. So you can just type in the location on your Google Map and then it will give you the exact location. You get me? So you don't necessarily need a map. The reason why we provide maps in our reports is because we want people to know the exact location where the work was undertaken. You get it? But if that can be easily found on Google Map, yeah, because I remember I ever submitted a paper to a journal, and then one of the reviewers said that it wasn't necessary for me to add the map, because with Google nowadays, it is easy for one to find locations. So all you need to do is to mention the location. Yeah. But if you want to add the map, you can go ahead and add it. Yes.
Yeah, doctor, I understand. I got it. So, doctor, if you have a paper, you have read some paper, then the person has cite another one, cite another paper. You are also writing your own paper.
Okay.
Then, are you going to cite the person who cite another person, or you are citing the person he has cite?
Yeah, I have gotten that a lot of time. Yeah, that one is sometimes, you know, what is advisable is that you cite both of them. You get it? Hello? To be on the, to be on the safer side, cite both of them. But in most instances, I've realized that it is always difficult to access the primary source. It's difficult for us to get the paper of the one who really, the primary source of the information. So in that case, you can cite the one who cited it.
Okay.
But it is very important that if you can find the original source of the thing, of the information, and cite the person. But once you cite the person who cited it, it's also okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Razak. Thank you. We would have the last two questions. One from Deborah and then the other one from Leah. So Deborah is asking that, what is the question? She's asking that, how do you assess that a paper is a good one? I think very straightforward, simple. How do you assess?
This is a very important question
that a paper is a
that
good
I should have addressed in my because I didn't really talk about how to find good papers and submit and all that. Yeah. So Deborah, we have different journals. So many of them. When you go online right now, you can find so many journals with different names, with different from different areas of study. So many, but some of them are not good journals. We have a group of journals we call predatory journals. So you should take note of that as someone in academia. If you want to submit your paper, make sure you submit it to a journal that is listed under a recognized database. So I think I searched. Let me share this with you guys so that you see it. Yeah, I searched for a list of some of the academic research database. These are the top list of academic research databases. So when a particular journal is being hosted by any of the following databases I am mentioning to you, then it means that whichever paper is published in it is a good paper. But you have to also, as an individual, critically examine the kind of information you are receiving from these journals or articles you read. So these are the list. We have 1, Scopus; 2, Web of Science; 3, PubMed; 4, ERIC or ERIC. We have IEEE Explore. We have Science Direct. We have a directory of open access journals. We have JSTOR or JSTOR. We have so we have a number of them, but these are the top ones. These are the top ones. We have the SCI journals. We have so many of them. And in China, for example, most of the universities will expect that you publish as a student, you publish your paper in either SCI listed or Science Direct or any of those. So before your journal will be hosted by a particular database, they would have gone through to make sure that the editorial board or whoever is hosting or whoever is the publisher is a recognized and well acclaimed publisher before they list them under their database. And there's a constant review of this list. So if a particular journal at one point in time doesn't go by the rules or guidelines of these database, what they do is what? They just take you off. They take you off. So day in, day out, they are updating this database. So anytime you are reading an article, try to find out which journal, and is the journal, listed under any of the recognized databases before you go ahead. Another thing I can tell you is that there are a lot of predatory journals. What is wrong with most of these predatory journals is that they are not kind of regulated. So any kind of material you send to them at all, whether it is good or bad, once you are paying some monies to them, they will publish it. You get it? So because of that, people won't advise you to read materials published by predatory journals. But also we have very recognized researchers who for one reason or the other will submit their papers to what? To such journals for publications. So sometimes some people will argue that it is not necessarily the journal you publish your work in, but it is the content or how good or bad the content of your work is that will determine whether a particular paper is good to be cited or not. You get it? But to be on the safer side, I would advise that always cite journals from recognized database. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Combat, thank you. Thank you very much. Actually, you just killed two birds with one stone, because the next question that Leah asked was to know other databases that she can get information or trusted resources from. And then you just listed them, the Scopus, the IEE, the ERIC, the Web of Science. Because I think she only asked that apart from Science Direct, what are the other what are the other databases that we have? So you just answered her question and then the previous question together. So this would be, as I said, that would be our last two questions for this evening. We are going to invite Augustina Bansa to give us the vote of thanks. So Tina, if you are online, you can give us the vote of thanks. Hello, Augustina. I think she's off because I can't see her in the list of people. Okay. Then we would have to let since Tina is off, we would have to let our president Thompson. I would have to put this. Where's Thompson? Oh yeah. Thompson is over. Hello, Thompson. Presido, please, can you hear me?
Yes, please. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you. Apparently, Augustina Bansa, I think probably something is wrong with her network, or I don't know really, but she's not online right now. So you would have to do us the honor of giving us the vote of thanks. Then Ruhaima to Abudu will give us the closing prayer. So
sure.
Yeah.
Wow, such an amazing time that we've learned a lot. Trust me, I've learned a lot. I have like almost like 4 pages of this thing. So we first of all say thanks to God, our Muslim brothers and sisters who say Allah, thanks to him who has brought us to this far with this successful end. Secondly, we will thank Dr. Cont'd for such an amazing presentation, amazing insight. We want to say we are very grateful for this amazing moment, this impartation. Trust me, it has helped some of us. It's a healing to some of us. Our third Thanksgiving is going to be on our NEC executives that were present, our past executives that were here, that we came to grace this seminar. We are so much grateful. And we also want to send our gratitude to our lovely and amazing members who joined us today, even with other people from different countries such as Kenya and other African countries that join us, such as Leah, Berian. We've seen you all, and we want to thank you for joining our amazing family, NUGS-Shanghai. We love you. Love you guys so much. So we thank you guys for joining us and for being with us, even those from Nigeria. And guys, we want to say big thanks to our own man, Sam, who has moderated this program. We are grateful, boss. We love your beer.
Thank you, President.
So thank you so much. Thank you guys.
Okay. So our president has said it all. He said it all. This has been a very, very, very insightful program, and I've personally also learned a lot. So finally, we're going to invite our hardworking organizer, Kwamina, to give us the closing prayer. So Kwamina, please give us the closing prayer, and then we would, we'll end everything.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for an awesome and a successful program. We give you all the glory, we give you all the praise. Father, even as we've ended this session, we pray that your awesome presence will be with us now and forever. These and many blessings we ask through your Son Jesus Christ. I've prayed. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. Amen. Okay. So, people of Shanghai, people of NUGS-Shanghai, this brings us to the end of our program, which was the academic seminar. Our host, Mr. Cont'd, has given us very educative points for us to use in our academic career. So we would end here, and then you can just enjoy this music, and you log off when you are, as and when you want. Thank you very much.